Hello everyone, welcome. I'm very excited to welcome you to the opening of the CAS Virtual Showcase 2021 and this keynote talk by Baasit Siddiqui on accessing aspirations through digital literacy. My name is Beverly Clark and I'm the Computing at School National Community Manager, and I'm your host for this session. We are also joined by Wendy Piccinini, who's the moderator and will be monitoring the question window. Very shortly, I will introduce Baasit, but before I do, just a couple of things to share in terms of housekeeping. During the session, please use the question window on the right-hand side of your screen to ask questions. The top of the window has an orange rectangle, which can be expanded or collapsed. Wendy will be making a note of questions posed in the question window, and these will be answered if time allows at the end. If time does not allow, responses will be posted on the CAS forum and across CAS social media channels. The hashtag for this event is hashtag CASVirtual21 altogether. As a reminder, all attendees are in listen-only mode. So please let me introduce Baasit. Baasit Siddiqui is the Managing Director of Siddiqui Education Limited. He has combined his 10 years teaching experiences in secondary ICT and computer science with his unique journey and television connections as one of the Siddiquis on the BAFTA and NTA winning television show Gogglebox. Through this program, he has educated, motivated, and through his company, he's also helped disadvantaged school children across the nation. Baasit is keen to celebrate the creative work done by students across the nation and the businesses and institutions working hard to support the children who need it most. In this session, he will explore the challenges around social mobility and how digital literacy is a vital tool in supporting upward mobility. Baasit will share practical strategies around the 4 C's: content, context, collaboration, and creativity, which aim to support teachers of computing science provide a love of learning and intellectual curiosity. I know that he's very excited to be delivering this keynote, and I'm very excited to hear this keynote also. Baasit, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Beverly, for that really lovely introduction. It's an absolute pleasure not only to be here, but to be starting this event as well. It's a genuine privilege. Thank you to everyone who's attended, and I'm looking forward to talking to you all. Again, Beverly said that feel free to ask any questions. There is going to be one point as well where it'd be fantastic if you could use the question box to interact for one little catchphrase that we're going to go through. So without further ado, I'll share my screen, introduce myself properly, and make a start. So hopefully you can all see my screen. I'm sure Wendy will let me know if there's any issues with that. So again, my name is Baasit Siddiqui, and some of you are probably wondering, what's that guy who's from television doing here delivering a keynote? Hopefully that will become clear a little later on. Now, whenever I'm sharing my journey, there are 4 key areas that I refer to. First and foremost, my journey through education. So casting my mind back many years now, I don't like to think how many years it was, but it was a very long time ago. I'd done a degree in business and information systems, and if I'm perfectly honest with you, I didn't have a clue what I was going to do next. At the time, I knew that IT and computers were the buzzwords, and I wanted to work in that industry, just not a clue what it actually involved. I ended up working as a data analyst, looking at ways to save the business I was working for money. Sometimes that meant some really difficult decisions had to be made. I remember thinking at quite a young age that this isn't the role for me. I just didn't enjoy the job. And I think the reason for that was because the business I was working for was the NHS. So you can imagine I was surrounded by some truly inspirational people, doctors and nurses, people who wanted to help other people. And I was the person who was treating them as data on a spreadsheet saying, oh, we could do with 1 less doctor or 1 less nurse. I just remember thinking that this just doesn't sit right with me. However, during that time, 2 students came in for work experience, roughly 14, 15 years old. And I was asked to show them the ropes, show them the work that I do. And they were the 2 most enjoyable weeks up until that point in terms of my career. And it was there that I got the teaching bug. I luckily had a friend at the time who was doing a PGCE, and I started asking them questions about it. It wasn't too long after that I actually did my PGCE and became a secondary school IT teacher. Eventually, I became the head of IT and merged IT and business together, and then became the head of computer science, IT and business across a federation across 3 different schools, managing close to 25 different members of staff, a number of them who were non-specialists. If anyone asks me today what my true passion is, it will always be education. I'm just involved in it in a very different way now. Now, 7 or 8 years ago, I can't remember how long it was, something very random happened where I ended up on television. That wasn't the plan by any stretch of the imagination, but it's allowed me to combine my passion and this unique experience and connections to create Siddiqui Education. And before I go too much into what Siddiqui Education involves and my own personal journey and things that I've experienced and that I can share, this lady always gets a mention. So Anna was a friend of mine that I met whilst I was at university. And the message I give the students is, as we go through our education and employment journey, the friendships that we make tend to be a little bit stronger because we're meeting like-minded individuals with similar goals and similar mindsets. That was definitely the case with me and Anna. We became really good friends. I stayed in the Midlands, began my teaching journey. She moved to London. Now, 7 or 8 years ago, I got a very random Facebook message from her saying that I'm working for a television studio. I remember you from years ago, and my boss has asked me if anyone I know would be good for this new show. That was a life-changing Facebook message, and the message I always give students is that you're never too far away from people that you met years ago, so make that good impression. And Gogglebox, whatever your thoughts about it are, for me personally, it has been a life-changing experience. I've been lucky enough to do some weird and wonderful things, attend events, do work for charity, do adverts, but they're all the things that the show itself have asked us as a family to do. And we're quite a proactive family. So on the back of that, we've done a couple of things as well. A couple of examples, I've luckily, or I guess unluckily, been able to run the London Marathon and live stream it for the BBC Facebook page. We've also done podcasts, which have turned into live shows, and done a number of different radio shows. Again, that's had no links to Gogglebox or Channel 4. They're things that we've said that we would like to try and do. But to be honest, the thing that I'm most proud of that it's led to is the creation of my business, Siddiqui Education. Now, before I go into what that involves and my experiences, I'd like to get a little bit of interactivity from everyone else. So I've got a little catchphrase here for you. When you consider my journey up until this point, I'm making the most of something, but does anyone know what this catchphrase is? So Wendy, if you can keep an eye on the answers and then feel free to announce when you think the person's got the correct answer, or feel free to just tell me what they've put.
Okay, here are the answers that have come in so far. We've got Make Hay When the Sun Shines by John.
Was that the first one?
Sorry?
Was that the first person? Was John the first?
That was the first person. And the second person has written, Whilst the Sun Shines, Make Hay, and that was Tom.
Ooh, John and Tom, fantastic. You've said it in different ways. I always say make hay whilst the sun shines. You're absolutely right. I'm afraid to say there are no prizes, though. It's just you get the accolade of saying that you got it first. So give yourself a virtual round of applause, a massive well done. And it's absolutely true. Make hay whilst the sun shines, make the most of every opportunity. And for me, it's been an opportunity to be able to work with lots and lots of different students, to combine education with my links to television and media, and that's evolved as any business does, and it's involved me working up and down the country with lots of different people. It all started with Let's Pitch It, a competition where students pitch ideas for television shows. The latest thing that I'm working on is a collaboration of lots of different providers on a platform called Time, and I'm very fortunate to do that. But it's not just an opportunity for me, it's an opportunity for the students that I work with. When I do my Let's Pitch It workshops, I specifically work with disadvantaged students. So that could be pupil premium students, NCOP students, pre-NEET students, all with the goal of helping them build their confidence, helping them build their skill set, and supporting them with their career directions as well. I'm very privileged to do the work that I do. However, it took someone else to tell me that I'm doing work to support social mobility. I remember I was at the BET show a number of years ago, and someone from Oxford University Press said, we'd love to talk to you and find out the strategies you're using to support social mobility. I remember saying, am I? I wasn't too sure. And I think that when we work in education and do the work that we do, we kind of just get on with it and don't necessarily put specific names and labels to it. However, the more I looked into it, I realized that's exactly what I was doing. I'll articulate what social mobility means in a moment, but I'm sure none of us are under any illusion about the challenges our disadvantaged students face. Everyone talks about the attainment gap and the impact that it has on our students. Some of us refer to them as free school meal students, and there's a lot of data and statistics around their attainment and how much further behind they are because of a number of different barriers. That will naturally have grown during the time of the pandemic and around what we call the digital divide as well. But I think it's important to remember that social mobility isn't something that can be specifically targeted within the school system. It can start in the early years and go and follow a person throughout their working life as well. We ultimately do what we can working in education, but it's something that is going to take time to fix. But hopefully there are solutions coming. I said I'd articulate what social mobility means, and I personally think On a Plate by Toby Morris is an absolutely fantastic way to sort of showcase what social mobility looks like. And On a Plate is a tale of two students, Richard and Paula. Richard knows that his house is warm and dry and he's going to have food in his fridge. Paula can't really say the same. She keeps getting sick. She doesn't know if she's going to get food. This slide always sits with me. I do a lot of work around unconscious bias and the attitudes and the unconscious attitudes that we have towards different people. And I think this one, to me, really hits a note. Richard's parents will do anything for their child, but so will Paula's. That's why they're working 2 shifts. So some of us have our perceptions about different people, the amount of work, their work ethic, and sometimes we can be too quick to judge. In this story, the 2 school environments are very different, but all of these things have already rolled into this early age of these 2 students, and we're getting an idea of the aspirations or the variation in aspirations of these 2 students. Richard, B+, you need a tutor. Paula with a B, actually with all of your barriers, you're doing absolutely fantastic. Now, these different challenges continue to snowball and roll as the years progress. University paid for versus working and trying to go through university. Sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know in Richard's case that can support you moving up that level. There's also links between deprivation and health. And if a loved one is unhealthy or sick, that will impact what you do next in your life choices. That continues. Now this one, when it comes to the work of unconscious bias and what we're going to talk about a little bit later, this one always sits with me. And maybe Paula learns to know her place. And I can flash back to the body language, the attitude, the eye rolls, and all the different things that we do as humans with the different students that we work with, and that long-term impact that could potentially have on our students. Long story short, On a Plate essentially shows that 2 students who academically were at a very similar level end up in 2 very different positions in terms of their life goals. Again, that's why I really try hard to do the work that I do. The work that I do through Let's Pitch It and Siddiqui Education, it isn't a silver bullet, but it's something that is helping, and collaborating with other people, we're all heading in that right direction. Now, specifically, Let's Pitch It, where students pitch an idea for a television show, a lot of that focuses on digital literacy, building student skills in using different types of software within a work setting. And I've been privileged enough to see some absolutely fantastic ideas that students come up with. And I wanted to share 3 with you with regards to today. So the first one, I remember the first winners of my Let's Pitch It competition, a group of students who came up with a really sneaky idea for a television show. Think Mrs. Doubtfire meets Sun Sea and Suspicious Parents, where a parent would dress up in prosthetics pretending to be a member of staff at a school, all the while for that week seeing what their child is like at school. It was a really interesting idea, but the resources that they created, the 2-minute trailer and the pitch they made, was really captivating and showed the chemistry between the group. They won the competition, got to go to London to meet the creators of Gogglebox. And there the creators of Gogglebox asked them the question, how did you come up with such an interesting, sneaky idea? And one of the young ladies said that, well, whilst I was in year 8, I was excluded, and my gran didn't know anything about this until she got the letter home. I wanted to create a show that showed what was happening behind the school gates. So we celebrated the fact that this young lady had taken such a negative point in her life and switched it and turned it around to win this competition. When I went to that school again the following year, that young lady was working as a mentor with the students that I had for that day. And I was really pleased to see that shift happen. And it was through the story that she told through technology that allowed that to happen. Sometimes technology can take our most reserved students, our introverted students, and then flip them and turn them into a completely different character. In the morning of one of my Let's Pitch It workshops, I noticed this student who was really quiet and didn't seem to be interacting too much with his group. I kept going over and saying, are you okay? Do you need any help? Just double checking that he was okay with everything. He politely just kept nodding his head. He was happy. In the afternoon, they started to use a new piece of software. It was new to everyone. It was called Binumi by Encyclopedia Britannica, an editing software, video editing software, and he got to use that. The shift in that young man was unbelievable because he became the expert in that situation. He hadn't used it before, but he had a confidence in problem solving using technology. And it was just amazing to see this introvert, nervous child turn into the leader in that situation. And again, we celebrated that. And that's the power of technology. It takes these students who would be introverts in certain situations and allows them to express themselves. My final example, to be honest, there's only one word for it, and that's magical. And it's something that's happened recently. So Let's Pitch It originally meant I had to physically go in. In the height of the pandemic, I pivoted quickly and created a digital version, specifically for families, and it allowed me to work with multi-academy trusts as a whole. So I worked with a multi-academy trust and created a multi-academy trust competition where all the families could enter their own ideas. And we got an entry, and to this day, I think it's still the most fantastic entry. You realize when this starts, it's a young man comes up to the camera, he's dressed as a magician, and you realize very quickly that the young man's got Tourette's. He then goes on to explain what Tourette's is, what people think it is, and how essentially it's an iceberg where what you see is this, and then underneath there's all these challenges happening. He spoke so articulately, but you could tell that he'd recorded it over and over again, trying his best to get it right as best as he could do. He went on to explain his idea for his television show, a talent show for differently able students called On the Flip Side. He finished by doing a magic trick and using digital technology to share that and to sort of compound how fantastic it was. Needless to say, it was absolutely fantastic to see, but I was so pleased that in that home environment, this child was allowed to shine in that situation. Again, that's the true power of technology, allowing these students to share their stories and share all of these unique things that they do. Now, when it comes to working with these disadvantaged students, I am such an advocate for technology and how powerful a tool it can be to support these students. And that's why when you hear about the digital divide and the challenges that these students have, that's why I get frustrated at it and want to see change in these situations. Pay the Wi-Fi or feed the children. Coronavirus has intensified the UK digital divide, and it is quite literally that. Pay the Wi-Fi or feed the children. I've had the privilege of working with Poverty Proof Your School Day. If you've not heard of them, they basically look at your school through the eyes of your most disadvantaged student and give you a list of what all the students' real life challenges are. And in some situations, this is exactly what it is going to be. And just to put it plainly, to be honest, there are the facts. 51% of households, sorry, I'm trying to move my screen. 51% of households who are earning 6 to 10,000 are online compared to 99% earning 40K. So that's the reality of it. But also it's important to remember that when it comes to digital technology, there are a number of different barriers. It isn't necessarily just the fact that our students, our young people and their families don't have the tablets or the devices themselves. Also, it doesn't just stop at the fact that they don't have connectivity as well. It also comes with the confidence. And I know a lot of schools felt that once they had access to laptops and could actually roll them out, parents, families didn't really know what to do with them and were worried about using them. So this is why this challenge, this journey that we're on now is so important, because there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution to it. However, people are doing different things to try and find a solution to this. Sorry, I'm just going to move my screen again. And Good Things Foundation is a fantastic place to start. And I came across some really interesting facts. First and foremost, I won't read the statistics out, but if you look at the right-hand side, you can see them. A lot of adults who filled out this survey expressed the need to actually have a physical place to actually upskill, to learn how to physically use these skills, these digital skills. Something as simple as online banking, and to feel the confidence to do it. And it isn't enough that these brilliant services are out there for free, but it's also we need an actual place to be able to go and upskill and learn. The 61% said internet access should be recognised as an essential utility. However, it was the 47% that really interested me, in the sense that adults said that they would be happy to donate their unused data to support low-income families. Now, that's a solution, a potential solution that really excites me. I think within this paper, it's referred to as gigabit to give a bit, which I think if that can work in essence, that would be an absolute fantastic way to hopefully support those disadvantaged people. But ultimately, unsurprisingly, 80% felt digital technology was vital to support them during lockdown. And that's just going to consistently continue to grow. I think if the pandemic has highlighted anything, it's the value and the importance in technology. That's why it's so important, the role that you have as educators with a specific focus on computer science, on ICT and digital literacy is vital. Now, again, there are a number of different solutions that are out there. I came across a couple that really interested me. Project Reboot, where there's a plan that you can follow to try and gather devices within your area. Virgin are also doing similar things. The Great British Tech Appeal, where you can donate these. I came across all of these and many more different initiatives that were being done by the Fair Education Alliance. So the Fair Education Alliance have curated a number of different resources that are out there to potentially support our young people in getting access to all of these different things. So feel free to click on that link and find out all the other things that they're doing. Some of them, I have to admit, were in the height of the pandemic, so some of them are a little bit different now, but there was always something quite interesting there. Now, bringing this back to social mobility, I think it's really important to remind myself and share the fact that when it comes to social mobility, essentially, we want to ensure that that children, wherever their starting point is in life, they can move past that. And it's interesting to see, according to the Moving On Up paper, that IT and technology offers social mobility and for upward mobility more so than other industries. And the reason that seems to be is because there's more routes to enter the industry and lower costs for qualifications and for skills. It's a skill that a lot of our young people are naturally learning and are interested in as well. And then there's that ability to upskill, which will hopefully lead to upward mobility. A young individual from a less advantaged background can find a career path that will enable an upward move in social mobility in the tech industry. And 3/4 of those who are in tech profession in the UK are better off than their parents were at that age. And that's ultimately what social mobility is, or trying to support social mobility. Where your parents are or whoever looks after you, you want to be in a position that is better than that. That's what the hope is, and that's what the goal is when it comes to social mobility. Looking to the future, unsurprisingly, in 2021, the top 15 in-demand jobs, 47% of those jobs required high levels of ICT and computer science skills. That included software development, web development, so many different aspects, but 100% of them required some form of digital literacy as well. Even roles such as nurses and basic other jobs, I shouldn't say basic, but other jobs required a skill set in ICT. To take it on a stage further, according to the Business Insider, the 30 best high-paying jobs of the future, all 30 required proficiency in ICT, and 33% of jobs required a high level of ICT and computer science skills. In both of these, though, number one, right at the top, they required a high level of ICT and computer science skills. So that, I think it goes without saying how essential these skills are that you are building in our young people right now. Now, the Moving On Up report does go on to offer its advice and support to us as teachers, and mainly career advisors and parents with better information and knowledge about the careers that are out there. For me personally, the entrepreneurial opportunities is something that I am very passionate about and such an advocate for. I know for a fact if it wasn't for the technology I had in front of me, my business wouldn't be where it is right now. To be able to simply pivot during the time of the pandemic and use IT and computer science to do that and develop an online platform is something that I don't take for granted. But even to take it a stage down from that, the fact that I'm able to go to so many different schools without the need for a map, I'm very grateful for that. I think if I had to actually use an old school map, I wouldn't be able to leave my house. It goes on to say encourage teachers to participate in programs and networks such as this, so it's fantastic that you have attended today. Now, I always feel at the end of these reports, that feels like there's lots more work for teachers to do, and I'm very much anti that, and I always try and think from a position of empathy, having done the job for over 10 years, having managed staff that have done it as non-specialists as well. So I thought and reflected on the challenges that computer science teachers or teachers with a computer science responsibility had. And I came up with a number of challenges. First and foremost, change. So I personally think that the area of computer science changes quite a lot in comparison to other subjects. Obviously, we've had the change from 1 to 9s and all of those things. Your schemes of work will always change, but there's that bit more because our physical technology is changing as well. Software and hardware challenges, the lack of understanding and support from SLT, and ultimately that teacher confidence, that imposter syndrome, that worry that I'm not completely confident with this new piece of technology. So just to try and summarize it very quickly, I thought about this and summarized it with 4 C's. Now, this is my own concept, my own ideas, but it's based on all of the different experiences, my own personal experiences and talking to different staff and students. So the first C stands for content. Do your due diligence and be confident in the content that is out there. And it's nice to see that there is so much fantastic content out there. CAS at the top of that list, looking at the resources that they have to provide to teachers, even if you are a non-specialist, it's all nicely there, it's nicely organized. If you want something a little bit more physical, the TTS robots and all of the schemes of work they have around there to try and do it with your younger audiences is fantastic. It's nice to see that Barclays are not only upskilling parents and adults on how to use technology, but also focusing on the coding side. And a personal favorite of mine, Mama Codes, which uses the art of storytelling to teach computer science. I think the two mesh really nicely there. So first and foremost, find the content that is out there, and it's nice to see that that is continuing to grow. Then to try and use that content, it's all about collaboration. Again, events like this and all of the amazing resources that CAS have. There are Teach Meets, there's BrewEd. My Time platform is a curation of lots of different professionals in lots of different aspects, supporting teachers in so many different ways and parents and students. Twitter, for all its faults, can be an absolutely fantastic resource. I remember when I needed support because a child had come to me saying that his brother was a child with autism and needed help with finding a job. I put a message out on social media, and within 15 minutes, I had a mini CPD session where this young child could go. So when it's used right, it can be an absolutely fantastic resource. So that power of collaboration. However, collaboration doesn't just stop there. It involves the collaboration with your students as well. Having been there at the height of the switch between ICT to computer science, I know how scary it is when you get a group of year 11s or year 13s who are absolute whiz kids when it comes to using programming languages, knowing the difference between different terms, and that can be really, really scary. But they're also your greatest asset, and it's so important to involve them and celebrate how fantastic they are at using technology. And that involves us considering the context. So when it comes to me personally, I know because of everything I did training as a systems analyst, that allowed me to develop empathy and patience that supported me as a teacher. When Google talks about the different traits that are important to them, it isn't the technical skills that are at the top. It's leadership, empathy, problem solving, being an effective communicator, team player, and being strategic. A lot of the things that a teacher is good for. When it comes to context, no matter how skilled your students are or how technologically confident they are in comparison to yourself, they'll never know the material, the teaching material better than you. They'll never know how to succeed and get the top marks and top grades better than you. And sometimes they can be so lost in the programming aspect or the technical aspect and lose sight of what they're actually trying to do. And that's ultimately trying to achieve the best grade possible. It's up to you to bring them back. And no one's going to beat you when it comes to that. So that moment you feel that imposter syndrome, it's important to remember that. That's further compounded by the creativity that you bring to the classroom. And when it basically comes to a teacher versus technology, pedagogy trumps format every single time. What matters is that key elements of effective teaching are present, with explanations building clearly on what pupils have already learned and how their understanding will be assessed. And I think that is so important to remember that, the role of the teacher. So just to summarize very quickly, content, collaboration, context, and creativity all combined can support you on your computer science journey. I think this is a fantastic place to start the CAS event. Hopefully you'll get a lot of useful things to think about and pause for thought. I'm going to finish on one very quick thing. In the height of the pandemic, I was really sad to see social media and its treatment of teachers, media especially. And I know personally, knowing so many different teachers, working with so many different teachers, how hard you have worked. You've done twice, if not thrice, the amount of work that you normally do. And I think that gets lost. So I just wanted to finish on a quote that I came across right at the height of the pandemic that I think summarizes teachers amazingly. I do not want to see one more article about how behind our kids will be when they start school again. We are teachers, we will meet our students where they are and we will move them forward. That is our work, that is what we do. Speaking personally, I know that if it wasn't for the skills I developed as a teacher, I wouldn't be where I am and my business wouldn't be where it is today. So when you have that Sunday evening feel, that wobble, that butterfly in your stomach, or it's just getting a bit too much, make sure you're looking after yourself, and a nice place to start is just remember all of these skills and so many more that you bring to the table. So all that's really left for me to say is a massive, massive thank you. Thank you to CAS for letting me kickstart this event, and thank you to everyone who has attended. I'll take myself off sharing my screen and say a massive, massive thank you to everyone.
Thank you so much, Baasit. And straight away, can I just say, wow, hearing your journey into education and, you know, the experiences of being a household name through Gogglebox has been really, really great to hear that. And I do like the way you pull things together at the end there, talking about, you know, the Sunday night jitters. All teachers, including myself, I'm sure have experienced this. And yes, we are the best people to get our learners to the points that they need to be and to be the best that they can possibly be. And also the challenges faced with teachers and by teachers through the changing tech. That's one of my personal bugbears. Our industry changes so quickly, so rapidly, and I think this is an additional challenge that teachers of computer science face. And I also like the what you mentioned about the Good Thing Foundation and upskilling adults also. All of that was really, really good. So, you know, I really enjoyed that. And I've written loads and made lots of notes, you know, things like the cartoon illustrations for social mobility. I did tweet that out during the presentation, and if anyone else has tweeted anything else, I'll pick that up later on after this. So before I come to questions and come to Wendy for questions, just a comment I saw in the comments window, and it said, I'll just quote, it said, "Not a question, but sat here working in an inner city school, working with many disadvantaged children. This is so encouraging to hear. Thank you." So that's, you know, feedback from one of our audience members here. So Wendy, I haven't seen you come back on screen as yet, so I'll just wait until you come back on screen. But what I'll also say, there you are, also of interest to our audience is the National Centre for Computing Education, the NCCE, has a digital literacy report out, and I've asked Wendy to pop that into the question window, and I think that many of you may find this quite useful to read that report and look at the recommendations for progression at primary and at secondary levels, which are all modeled through the Teach Computing curriculum. So that is something I think you should have a takeaway and have a look at that later on. Wendy, do we have any questions, please?
Yeah, thank you. Just to confirm that I've put the link in the chat now, so everyone should have received that. Yeah, just to say, Baasit, another couple of people have just really thanked you for your keynote. So just echoing what Beverly's already said, I think it's resonated with a lot of our listeners this afternoon. So we have a couple of questions. Halima was asking about the website that you mentioned to do with disadvantaged children. She wants to find out more, so she wanted to know where to go to do that. So I don't know if you could just pick up on that point.
Definitely. So just a couple that spring to mind. The Fair Education Alliance and all of the links that they've got there, specifically with the digital divide, have been fantastic. But two people, obviously through the work that I do supporting disadvantaged students, two names keep cropping up. And one of them is Poverty Proof Your School Day, which is looking at the school through the eyes of the most disadvantaged student. It can be absolutely harrowing what they come up with, but it's all really, really useful. So Poverty Proof Your School Day, fantastic bunch of people, and also Challenging Education. So they have a concept called RADI, which is Raising Aspirations of Disadvantaged Youngsters, I should say. And the name of that again is Challenging Education. So there's some fantastic, amazing people out there. But if you give me a little follow on social media, you'll see me posting and celebrating them all the time.
Brilliant, thank you. Nick was asking, you used a lot of statistics in your presentation, and he was just interested to find out where you got the statistics from.
Yep, there's a mishmash of them. You've got access to the PowerPoint, haven't you, Beverly? Does that go out with the statistics, or basically I should say, yes. Sorry, in the notes, wherever you saw a statistic, there's the links to each of those. The BCS paper I used quite a lot. There was another one that sprang to mind. The blueprint from the Fair Education, I used a number of their statistics as well. So they will be there. If you're struggling with any links, then I'll make sure that you get them over as well.
Yeah, I think we've got time for one final question. In your presentation, you mentioned Let's Pitch It. I wonder if you could give the listeners a bit more information about that national competition and how they could get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. If you visit siddiqui-education.co.uk or just get in touch with me through the Twitter handle, by all means feel free to get involved. But it's been running for 3 years. Students work together in a group of 3 to research, plan and pitch an idea for a television show. It's a national competition, so we whittle down the best ideas at the end of the academic year, and those students with the most creative, weird and wonderful idea get a chance to go to London to meet the creators of Gogglebox and a little bit of spending money. Basically, it's a jolly to London at Christmas time, so it's just a really nice time for them. But as you can imagine, I've met some amazing kids who have come up with some brilliant ideas, and behind it all is the importance of transferable skills and aspirations more than anything, I think.
This sounds fantastic. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Okay, thank you very much, Wendy. So before I bring this session to a close, At the very end, once it is closed, there will be a short survey will appear on the screen, and we'd be very grateful if you could take a minute to complete that survey to help us to plan for future and further content for you. A recording of this webinar will be available on the CAS YouTube channel towards the end of the week, and you will also be able to download a copy of Baasit's presentation and links to all of the stats and everything he's spoken about, and that is through the CAS website. So a recording of the webinar on the YouTube channel, and in terms of the actual material used, please go to the CAS website. And if all else fails, please send an email in to Computing at School and we can direct you to the right place. It remains to say, coming up after this session, there are 2 further sessions. There is a STEM Ambassador session and there's also another session on enhancing progression, assessment and transition in secondary schools. We've got a STEM Ambassador session suitable for all, and also a secondary session. We do hope to see you at other sessions during this week and also next week. And please continue to spread the word about computing at school. It just remains to say, Baasit, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us and for opening this CAS virtual showcase and hearing your insights and your journey. It's been really inspiring. Thank you very much for doing that. And also thank you to Wendy for moderating the question window. And I can see you've been answering all of our listeners' questions. So without any further ado, some of you are probably going on to the other sessions. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, a massive, massive thank you, Baasit, and have a lovely evening, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.